Good morning. I'm going to be starting a new series. Now, if you've ever watched anything on this channel before, you'll know that I'm a massive fan of two things. The first thing that I'm a massive fan of, and I'm a huge advocate for, is the Raspberry Pi. I think they're great little emulation devices. I think they can get a lot done. I think you can have a lot of fun with them. And I think they're a great place to get started. Bear in mind, though, there are a couple of things that the Raspberry Pi can't do at all or well yet. It can't do things like Dreamcast. There's a lot of PSP stuff that it can't do. It really doesn't do GameCube. I mean, it can't do GameCube, it can't do Wii, it can't do PS2. And there are other certain things that it doesn't do, like a lot of N64 stuff it can't do well yet. So I do think they're great, and I'm a massive advocate for them. But they're going to take some time to get a lot of the emulation, running smoothly. So what I've done, and I've done this again with the ethos of this channel, we're doing everything super cheap. So what I've done is I've built a very, very, very under budget emulation PC. I scoured eBay and like Facebook Marketplace, and I managed to get an old Optiplex from some kind of corporate server that some guy was getting rid of. I got that for about 60, 68 quid, something like that. And then on like Facebook, there was a guy getting rid of a 1030 Nvidia card for like, I paid about 40 quid for that. And then a couple of sticks of RAM for like Chinese bootleg RAM for next to nothing. All in, it came to around about 120, which for an emulation PC, for things like the Dreamcast, the Saturn, and PlayStation 2 and Wii and GameCube and stuff, is relatively speaking incredibly under budget. For actually playing the games, I tend to use the discs, but I can even rip these discs into the machine and do that. So, like I say, that's the first thing. I'm always going to recommend people start with the Raspberry Pis, but when you want to emulate something else, and the only reason I'm emulating a lot of this stuff is for A, convenience, because it's all in the same place, and B, because there are certain titles I can't find. Like, I'm going out and I'm buying a lot of like PS2 stuff, and I'm buying a lot of Wii stuff and GameCube stuff, but it's getting a lot harder to find, a lot harder, and that's where that PC comes in. Secondly, my cheap bootleg Chinese capture card, which, if you've seen my last video, we had a bit of a wake for. I'm just going to take a moment. Hang on. I'm just going to take a moment to mourn the passing of my cheap Chinese capture card. Unfortunately, the capture card that I have used for 2 years is now with the angels in Chinese bootleg tech heaven. It had, unfortunately, shorted out and died. Well, apparently it's back to life. This being, we're coming up to Easter, so I guess it's appropriate, but it just came back to life. So the capture card's working again. Hoorah! So I'm going to be running this series through this new PC, but also I'm going to be using the Raspberry Pi through the capture card, just like I used to in the old days. So for some of the emulated stuff that isn't like 3D and needing a little bit more power, we're going to be using the Raspberry Pis. Another quick thing about this channel, again, if you've watched the channel, like, my whole ethos is doing things super on the cheap. So not only have I built the machine, relatively speaking, super cheap, not only do I build my cases and everything else super cheap, but that applies to everything. So I'm going to be using a microphone that I spent a couple of quid for on eBay, and also a really cheap webcam that I found in the back of a drawer. My wife's a professional photographer. I have access to DSLRs, but that's not the point. The point of this whole channel is, can you do it cheap? How cheap? And does it look all right? It doesn't need to be the best. It doesn't need to be great. I've got access to lighting rigs, but I'm not using them because not everyone has access to that. I'm basically putting this entire YouTube channel together with stuff that I found or I can get cheap. So it ain't going to look the best, but as long as I'm having fun, who cares, right? I could use the best camera I can find. I could use, the best lighting rig I can. But if the game's garbage and I'm not having fun, does it really matter? So, again, that's the first thing I'm super enthusiastic about. The second thing I'm super enthusiastic about is... Oh, hang on, look, here we go. Castlevania. Now, I'm a brand new Castlevania fan. I didn't actually know I liked Castlevania until 2017. I owned a Castlevania game. I owned the Black Disc Symphony of the Night. A Black Disc is like a black promotional disc for the PS1. Thing's worth a fortune now. I think I either gave it away or threw it away. I played 10 minutes of it and went, nah, don't like that. Got rid of it. I was wrong, I'll admit. So in 2017, I played my first Castlevania game, and now I've played all of them. Or at least I thought I had played all of them. Because the other day I went online and typed in list of Castlevania games. And that list is long. There are a few games, not many, but there are a few games where you're thinking, Konami? Really? You've been drinking? You're alright. You need to lie down. Here's what I can assume happened, right? So, Konami had its like money makers, and it needed those because Hideo Kojima was taking forever to knock out Metal Gear games, right? So while he was taking his sweet time with that, and Team Silent were taking their time trying to perfect Silent Hill, they needed money. So we had, and it's not like needed money like now where they're using pachinko machines to circumvent like Japanese gambling laws. Like back then, they had a few franchises that they just constantly pumped out games for. So ISS Pro, which turned into Pro Evo, the football, and Castlevania, they were just knocking them out. And they would, by all accounts, doing really well. So when I went through this list, and it is a long list, there are some where I'm like, really, Konami? Like, really? Okay. And I have to know. Like, I have to know. No one talks about these games, so I have to know. So that's the point of this very, very, very short series. It's only going to be about 4 or 5 of what I'm calling Castlevania. So, commitment to dad joke, 1. Secondly, I hope this series pans out because I've wasted my lunch break making these title cards. So yeah, this is a series called Castlevania. Now, there are 2 things I can't find. The 2 things that I wanted to find the most and can't find ROMs of on the internet anywhere. One is the 2009 arcade machine. So in the UK, we had the Silent Hill light gun shooter in the arcades, which I've played, actually. It was around the South Coast. They've got these, I think House of the Dead, but Silent Hill. It's a really cool booth that you have to stand in to play it. But the Castlevania one I've never seen, and it's got a whip controller. Looks great. Can't find the ROM on that. But if I can, or if I ever come across it on like the bit of the internet that the sunlight never touches, I'm damn sure adding it to this playlist. And to this series. The second one I can't find is the Tiger handheld LCD Symphony of the Night game. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. I mean, it shouldn't have come as a surprise to me because Tiger made these for everything. But there is a Symphony of the Night Tiger Electronics handheld LCD game. And I can't find the ROM for it anywhere. So that, if I ever come across those 2, they are damn sure being added to this playlist. However, I'm trying to go across platforms as well. So we've got, what did I say we've got? We've got Wii, we've got N64, because that runs well now. We've got PS2, we've got PSP, and WiiWare. But why not start this series? Let's start the show with a showstopper. What if I told you, and again, remembering that Konami may have been knocking it back a bit, what if I told you that there was a one-on-one fighting game, right? These are all officially released, this is not Mugen. What if I told you there was a one-on-one fighting game starring Castlevania characters? Okay, fine. What if I told you it was like Soul Calibur? Well, I mean, great, because they've got, weapons and whatnot. What if I told you it was exclusive for the Wii? And what if I told you it had waggle controls? Castlevania Judgment on the Wii. Now, again, I hadn't heard about this until I looked at this list. There is a one-on-one fighting game that is a Wii exclusive that has motion controls. Now, you don't need to use the motion controls. You can clip into the bottom here, classic controller, or you can use a GameCube controller. But if you give me the option to use waggle controls, I am damn sure going to use waggle controls. So I need to know. I need to know, is this thing going to be a massive, like, garbage file, or is it going to be good? What if it's good? Like, what if it's actually good? What if it's fun? I don't know, but I need to know. So that was the point of this series I'm calling, again, commitment to a dad joke, Castlevania. Let's look at the games that no one ever talks about. Like, everyone talks about Symphony of the Night, everyone talks about some of the DS games, everyone talks about Aria, everyone talks about Castlevania 3. What about these things that no one seems to talk about? In a similar way to my, like, Doom Forgotten Maps video. So, I'm going to stress test this new capture setup that I've got running over there. Again, I'm going to be using a terrible webcam that I found at the back of a drawer and a microphone. Because why not? So anyway, let's get into it. I'm ready to use, I'm ready to whip, and I'm ready to use holy water. I don't know. I really want it to be good. Please let this be good. All right, cool. Let's have a look at Castlevania. In the UK, we spell judgment with 2 E's, and apparently around the world, they spell it with 1. So Castlevania, that's fine. It's easier to spell. So, let's have a look at Castlevania Judgment. Peace.